Welcome, everybody, to our overview meeting for the Circle 2050 Metropolitan Transportation Plan Major Update. We're going to be going through the application packet. This is more of an overview so that we can just run through all of the requirements, and then you all can ask me questions if you have any. And then this will be recorded and put online for anybody to refer to if they need to later on. So I'm going to get started with all my icons. I'm going to get started with the initial packet document. So this is a Word document. You can find, actually, let me back up for just a second, because if you go to our website, so this will be the first bit of information, and you go to planning and you go to the Circle 2050 MTP update project, you will be able to scroll down and find that information packet right there. It is a zip file, and you can open that up. There are 3 files in it. So getting back to the first item in that packet, and also let me introduce myself. This is Jen Higginbotham. I'm the principal planner for planning for the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Sorry I didn't do that earlier, but let's jump into this packet. So for the Metropolitan Transportation Plan Word document that's in the packet, this does include a lot of instructions, and it also includes a couple of worksheets. So first up in the packet, you can see the call for project dates. The call for projects did open on March 4th. It will close on April 14th. That's a Sunday, just in case anybody needs to scramble over a final weekend to get those projects submitted. There is a project applicability and checklist. So this is information on what projects need to be included in the MTP to be eligible for other funding. So this includes what we call capacity expansion projects or regionally significant projects. And those primarily include what I've listed down here at the bottom: new roadway segments, added through lanes on an existing road, or newer modification of existing interchanges. So not intersections, but interchanges. And then for rail and transit, it's new fixed route service, route extensions that include new stations, and that's not just stops, that's stations, and added track or fixed guideway capacity, which we don't really have in this region, but those are the requirements. I will mention that when it comes to new roadway segments, we are talking primarily about arterials, major roadways, maybe some major collectors. So if you have a question about whether a new roadway that you're proposing, for example, if it's a county project and it's filling in a gap between, in the mile grid, you might want to reach out to me and just ask if it's going to be regionally significant, and I can check on that and get back to you fairly quickly so that you can have time to finish your project applications if you need to. But we have found in the past few years that there are some projects, new road segments, especially in counties, that have not been considered regionally significant. So first up, we have a checklist. This includes all of the items that you will need to include as part of the application. So first, you'll be going to MyTip and looking at adding or carrying over projects. You'll be adding where those projects are, so maps and shapefiles for that. And then we have 4 worksheets. Those first 2 worksheets are part of this Word document, and the other 2 are Excel spreadsheets, and we'll walk through those. So for MyTip, I'm actually going to bring up the website here and just show you that if you're new to MyTip or you haven't used it before, you can go to mytip.indympo.org, and that will take you to our public-facing page. There's a login link right here that you can click, which will take you to the login screen. If you are new to MyTip, you can actually just click this button right here under the login button so that you can get new access to the MyTip portal, or you can use that if you forgot your password. Once you get into the portal, there will be 2 options. You'll go to MTP adoption up here in the upper right-hand corner. So once you click that, you'll have the option to either add a new project or carry over a project, and I'll show you what those screens look like. So create a new project, that's going to be your pretty typical like blank form, and you need to fill it out from scratch. if you click carry over projects, this is going to take you to any projects that have previously been in the MTP but are not funded, or at least they shouldn't be funded. If they are showing up in this list and they have funding, that probably means that the entry needs to be updated in MyTip. And we would ask you to take a look at that or let us know if you need help. But there are buttons over here to carry over these projects into the new MTP. Now, clicking this button is not the end of it. You still need to go through and look at those worksheets because we have updated some of our scoring criteria. And so you would need to update the worksheets so that we can make sure that is reflected. And all of the worksheets will be uploaded into MyTip through just uploading documents. So those will be documents that are attached to the project entry. So that's a quick run through of MyTip and how that's going to work. And then I'm going to scroll on down here. There's some information. If you have any questions about things, you can go back and you can kind of check out this first section here. We do have a request about how we would like to get map files. I know that all communities are different in their digital resources and how they can do that. We would like to have an Esri shapefile, but if you can't do that, there are a couple of additional options here for how you can get that to us. We do have to put that project on a map at some point and fairly early in the process, so we do need that. When it comes to assigning MTP ID numbers for new projects, so if you're carrying over a project, it should already have an ID number, and you would just keep that ID number. If you are adding a project, please do not put placeholder text. It causes problems later when we're trying to figure out where the project is and we're trying to search for it. So we've created this table in the packet that shows you what your next available number is for your community. Some communities have had more projects over the years than others, so the number is fairly high. Like, for example, Westfield is all the way up to number 47. But please start with the number on this table and then continue up from there so that we don't have any overlapping numbers assigned and we can find those projects. That will be a number that you will put on this first worksheet, the additional project information worksheet. It goes right here, project MTP number. You can either pull that out of MyTip if you already have a number or take it from that list above and then continue on from there. We do have some questions about project type. Some of these questions are to help in travel demand modeling. Some of our scoring criteria for the MTP does look to the travel demand model to give us outputs. And so Catherine Costin, our modeler, needs to have accurate information so she can do that. In past years, she's done a lot of following up with communities to get the information that she needs. We're hoping that some of these questions will reduce the amount of following up that she needs to do. So for example, if you know some of the basic design criteria that you're thinking about in these projects, please include it in the text box here. We have a question about roundabouts, specifically how many lanes do you think it's going to have and what's the diameter of it? That helps her put it in the model properly. And then we have questions about the number of through lanes. So this is specifically the number of through lanes. We're not talking about outer turn lanes at intersections or a two-way center turn lane. We're talking about actual through lanes. We've had submissions in the past that said that a project was being widened from 2 lanes to 5 lanes, and we've had to double check on that to make sure that that is trying to be a two-way center turn lane and what exactly that design criteria is so that we can model it properly. We do have a question here for, is there a two-way center turn lane? So that's where you would mark that. And then if you have any information on where various turn lanes might be in the project, if there are turn lanes at all, please include those. And then if you are submitting multiple projects from your jurisdiction, this is an area where you can let us know out of the total number of projects, say you're submitting 4 projects, where does this project rank 1 through 4? And what that does is if we have 2 projects from the same community that score fairly similarly, and one might show up in one time period and one might show up in the other because of the way we have to break it for our fiscal constraint, then we can look at your priority ranking. We won't swap things that are very different in the scores that they get, but if there's a pretty similar score for a couple of projects, we might move up a project that you prefer. So that's your opportunity to tell us which ones you personally rank higher. A new question, I think it's a question we had before, but we're now using it for scoring, is question 11 about if this project is in a community document. So that document needs to be something that has been made available for public review and comment, and then also approved by your community. So it could be a thoroughfare plan, a comp plan, a capital improvement plan, a sub-area plan, anything that has been put out for public comment and was approved by a decision-making board in your community. We have a question about if a project is multi-jurisdictional. We would ask that only one community submit that project if it is, but this is where you can let us know, and then we can follow up for more information. And then where on the regional freight network is the project? It's very likely that a project will be on tier 1 or 2. Those are primarily interstates, but if you click this link right here, it will take you to a freight network map on the website, and you will be able to see what tier your project is assigned on that freight network. And the freight network tiers are over here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you can enter that information pretty easily. Similarly, we have a question about if the project is included on the high injury network. That is a new question, and you can click that link and it will take you to the high injury network map. For this map, we are primarily asking about those blue lines. The light blue lines are the high injury network. The dark blue lines are also the high injury network, but it's where pedestrian and bicycle crashes are overrepresented. So either of the blue colors are something that we're looking for here, but don't mark it if it's any of these orange or red dots. Those are just showing where we've done safety studies in the past. So again, as I mentioned, we did have similar worksheets last time for the MTP call for projects, and you could pull those out of MyTip and you could look at the questions that you answered last time and transfer those over if you want to save yourself some time, but we do need you to look at the new sheet because there are some new questions on there. The next worksheet is a congestion management planning worksheet. This is more just to find out if your community has been looking at alternatives to widening roads or building new roads to address congestion. So you'll put in the project name and the MTP number, and each project does need one of these worksheets. It's not just one for your community, it's one per project. You'll look down through the list, you'll read the information, and you'll let us know if any of these things are things that your community is already doing or things that your community has considered doing either on this project in particular or perhaps in the area of the project to try to reduce congestion. At the bottom, because added capacity is an option at the bottom of this worksheet, if you check that it's added capacity, which you will because that's what these projects are that you're submitting to the MTP, we'd ask that you give us some information on why that capacity expansion is needed, and also explain if there are any of the additional strategies above that will be implemented in the project. How are you going to be incorporating those? Congestion management is something that MPOs are required to do, so this is our congestion management worksheet to help us in that process. We do appreciate that participation. And then we have 2 additional worksheets. One is the safety countermeasures worksheet, and I will walk through that in just a second. That is a separate Excel spreadsheet. And then there is a cost estimating spreadsheet tool. Anyone who has submitted projects to MyTip is probably familiar with this, but we do have a newer version of it in the zip packet than what you may have used for previous MyTip call for project, or tip call for projects. So I did add, after posting this packet on March 4th on Monday, I did come back a couple days later and add just this information to this Word document packet. It's about what to include as the open to traffic year in the cost estimation spreadsheet and how to estimate right-of-way costs. And then letting you know that you can override a couple of the construction cost default values with reasonable local assumptions. So we have a fairly big region geographically, and so there may be some differences in how these percentages might work for things like PE and CE. So you can adjust those in the spreadsheet. But Matt Miller is online. He put that sheet together and he'll walk through that. But I did want to point out that I added these additional information instructions earlier this week. Finally, in the packet, we have the project scoring criteria, just so everybody's aware of it. This was updated by the policy committee in February. There are a few items on this list that the MPO will just look at your projects and do the calculations without needing you to submit any information. So for example, like urbanized area, that's why we need the shapefile so that we can calculate that. And then there are a couple of these about regional activity centers. We will be running those processes to pull those in for scoring. And then we have a couple of modeling criteria here that will come out of the travel demand model. So this is just to let you know what that scoring criteria is. So, and then we have a little summary at the bottom of all the things we used. So that's the first worksheet. Are there any questions about the first worksheet before I move into the next one? I'm not hearing any questions, so I'm going to go ahead and move into the next one. Again, those worksheets
I have a quick question. Sorry,
yes.
I was muted. Hey, Ashri, with Vice Town. So the opening year for all projects, irrespective if it is you want to open it sooner, I should put it 2050 in the spreadsheet. Is that right?
Yes, I believe the spreadsheet will calculate it as 2050 for some of the fields, but not for right of way. So you'll need to just put an inflation number on that so that it can be in 2050 costs.
Okay.
And
That
Matt
is
will,
irrespective of what when we want to build the project, right? When we apply for funding, if it is only
yeah, so the MTP has to be fiscally constrained. So it has to be, we have to look at what revenue we reasonably think that we will have in the region over the next time period, which for this plan is up to 2050. And so once we know how much revenue we think we're going to have based on the projections that we've made, then we have to look at how much we have available for the MTP projects and constrain those accordingly to make it a little bit more realistic. In order to do that, we have to have those complete project costs to be able to use. And so because we don't know which time period a project is going to go into until after we score it, we're asking everybody to just enter that as 2050. And then we can do some calculations in the Excel spreadsheets to then assign those to the time periods based on the scores that the projects receive. So the numbers would be adjusted in the final MTP list based on the time period that a project falls in. But initially we need everything to be the same so that we can compare it easily, if that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Yes. Okay, let me go ahead and bring up this safety countermeasures worksheet and I'll just step through that real quick. It's pretty much the same worksheet that you saw last time, but we did correct a few things and we went back to the federal highway measure safety countermeasures to see if there were any new ones and incorporated that information. So we do ask that you submit a new version of this worksheet, even if you want to look at the old one and pull some data across for any projects that were already in the MTP. So again, we're asking for the name of your LPA, your city, town, or county. We're asking for the name of the project and the MTP number that's assigned to the project. And that should match the other worksheets. And
Hey,
then
Jen,
these, yes.
we're not seeing your screen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Give me a second.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I stopped sharing for questions and then I forgot to start again. Okay, let me start that again. So this is a new worksheet. The only thing I talked about was just this first page so far. So we do need the name of the city, town or county at the top, the project name and the MTP number. Those are the yellow boxes. These other boxes below that will auto-complete as you go through and enter information into the other two tabs of the form. So there's two tabs. One is for vehicle countermeasures and one is for pedestrian and bike countermeasures. So you'll see that in each form there are major types and then there are subcategories and then there are the actual countermeasures under that. The ones in yellow are the ones that Federal Highway has shared data showing that they happen to be a bit more effective than the others, but everything on this list has been shown to increase safety or reduce crashes and deaths and injuries, etc. So that's why we're asking for these worksheets. As you go through, we're asking you to think about the things that will be incorporated into this project in particular, because you know maybe some of the intricacies of this project or some of the issues already occurring in those areas. Or if it's something that your community has just committed to doing wholesale for every new project, then you can click those boxes as well. We have, as I said, the vehicle tab, and then we also have the ped and bike countermeasure tab. I did notice that we forgot to change the title up here, so it says vehicle, but these are all the bike and ped things. I'm not going to change that in the worksheets. I think that's a pretty minor thing that people can figure out. But again, you just check the boxes for these pedestrian and bicycle countermeasures that you already are doing on a regular basis, or that you would think would be definitely included in this project in particular. Again, we do need one of these worksheets for each project that is submitted. But also, like I said, you can go back and look at what you submitted last time for any existing projects, and there are probably some similar fields here that you could carry over if you want to speed that process up a little bit. Are there any questions about that safety countermeasure worksheet? Not hearing any. It's a pretty simple worksheet. So that brings me to the cost estimation spreadsheet, and I'm going to turn that over to Matt Miller, and he's going to walk us through that worksheet in a little bit more detail, and feel free to ask questions if you have them. And once we're done with that, we can come back and see if you have any other questions about the rest of the process. So Matt is working with the MPO to help with our cost estimations.
Thanks, Jen. Yeah, I'm Matt Miller from HNTB, and Jen said I'll walk through the spreadsheet with you in just a minute or so. I just want to reiterate what Jen had said about the cost estimating. We do want the cost estimates in $2050, so for all the projects, so that we have consistency. And then, as Jen said, as the MPO goes through the project scoring prioritization process and assigning projects to different time periods, those costs get adjusted to reflect the time that they would actually be constructed. So if you use the MPO cost estimating spreadsheet, and you put in the 2050 as the open to traffic year, that cost escalation is automatically entered. The spreadsheet is defaulting to 4% per year compound growth rate, and that's based on looking long term at the federal highway has a transportation construction costs index, and looking at that over the last 20 years, that's about what the growth rate in construction costs has been. And as Jen said, right-of-way costs are not escalated in that cost estimating sheet, so you will have to enter those in $2050 and indicate what kind of growth rate you used for that. You don't have to use the spreadsheet tool if you've got another method that gives at least the same amount of detail. But if you don't use it, you need to provide whatever cost escalation rates you're using. And you need to make sure that it breaks down, including construction costs, preliminary engineering costs, which is design, survey, environmental, geotech, construction engineering costs, which is inspection, testing, and then right-of-way acquisition. So I'm going to share my screen. Or I'm going to ask Jen to let me share my screen.
Wasn't sure if you had that access or not. Let me find you here in the list. you go.
Go. And screen 2. Okay. Everybody see that?
Real quick, we do have a hand up from Ryan. Is that for before we jump into the spreadsheet?
Oh,
Yeah, thanks, Jen. Just, I guess, real quick. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
hello, Ryan.
I know that you had mentioned the 4% construction costs over 20 years. And I think it's good for us to, take a look at that longer term. But it seems like the last, obviously, 5 years and with COVID and then the BIL money that's kind of flooded in, and the local context for us with Indiana pumping a lot of money into our region in the state seems like it's a bit higher than that. And so I didn't know kind of if it's okay to have a slightly higher than 4% increase, or look at a shorter time period as far as looking at that inflation. I don't know if that's you or if that's the MPO that's kind of answering that, but
Well, I can address the 4%. I mean, it is a little bit higher in the last couple of years. But we looked at 20 years.
yeah.
So, over the long term, it's not gonna be like it has been the last couple of years.
Okay, so we're not terribly worried about the potential for, an increase next year in the state house pumping more money into the construction side, and then bumping that inflation up even more.
I'll just jump in. I mean, it's possible, but we as Matt was kind of putting together the escalation costs and updating those, in previous years, we'd been using what was it, 2.5%?
Yeah, last go around we'd used 2.5%.
Yeah, so for previous MTPs, it was
Yeah.
lower. And so HNTB took the task on to look at more data and try to come up with a more reasonable escalation rate that reflected a longer time period. And so we are increasing that. That's why it's a new spreadsheet, even from the last tip call for projects, because of that escalation rate.
Okay, thanks.
Right. Yep.
That's all I had.
Okay. Okay, so you can all see my screen, right? Because I can't see it. I can't see it on there, but I'm
Yes.
assuming you can. Okay, so these are the 3 files that are in the tip packet, and I just wanted to open this now. Well, I'll just show you, because if you open it, you're likely to see a message that there is a macro that's been disabled. You can enable it. It doesn't really matter. I'll show you what the macro is when we get in there. All it is there's one macro in the file that clears the input sheet of entered values. So you really don't have to enable that macro. But if you want that message to go away, you can right click on the file and hit properties. And then in the general tab down at the bottom, it says there's a security thing. It says the file came from somebody else, and macros have been blocked. And so if you want to unblock them, you can do that. But I'm going to go ahead and open it. So I think a lot of you, if not most of you, have seen this file before, this spreadsheet. I don't know if you've used it. We always provide it. Just you can use it for your information during the annual tip call for projects. It's really set up more for the MTP because of the level of detail. So the first sheet here is some it's a user guide. It's got some information on the different sheets and how they work. The main sheet that you would be working with is this input sheet. And this is the macro right here. Is there's a button that clears all the entries if you have entries that you want to clear. If you don't care about the macro, you don't have to enable it. So this top part asks, or on the left side, there's a lot of different segments here that ask you information about your project. And then on the right side are some error checking messages down here. If anything shows up in red, that means there's a potential error. Some of them are critical, some of them are not critical. But it wants you to enter your project ID, a DES number if you have it, who the project sponsor is, that would be your organization, and then description of the project, beginning and end, the length of the project, county, township, opening year. And this is where if you want to have 2025 costs or 2050 costs, excuse me, this is where you put in 2050, whether it's rural or urban. And then there's different sections in here for freeway, interchanges. Probably most people would be working in the new or reconstructed surface streets or widening, intersection improvements, entering bridges. And then this will cover a lot of project types, but it doesn't cover everything. So I'm going to zoom in here a little bit. So there is space down here. If you've got some other unique types of work that aren't covered by this, you can put a cost in. And then down here is where you would put your right-of-way cost. And like I said, this would need to be in $2050. And I'll go through here in a minute and just kind of put in an example. And then this cost summary sheet tab is where you would get the output. Then these yellow tabs are all assumptions and unit costs that can be, these are the default values in blue. You can override them. So if you think your preliminary engineering costs are 15% instead of 10, you can put 15% in here. It will ask you to explain why you're overriding it. You can just put something in there. Local experience. Like that, that clears that. The unit costs are, this was updated in 2023. I know this says 2022, but these are defaults for 2023. This is based on 2023 NDOT unit prices. You can override these. And then the blue sheets are just calculations that are going on in the background. And basically what the spreadsheet does is it takes the big ticket items, pavement, drainage, earthwork, curb and gutter, things like that, and estimates those costs, and then assumes, and this is based on looking at numbers of projects over the years, it assumes that those are about 60% of the value of the project. So then it adds 40% onto that for other items. So I'll go through a quick example. Any questions so far? Okay.
I have a really quick question, I guess. We've been doing some intersections to interchanges.
Yeah.
These are not the type of projects you're looking for with this call, right?
I think that depends on the project details. So if you're separating grade, then you probably want to let me know about it so that I can find out if it is something that our interagency consultation group feels is significant. It also probably needs to be on like a primary arterial kind of a roadway. But interchanges is something that we look at, but I guess it depends on kind of how it's designed and how much of a load it carries, et cetera.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry if it's not super cut and dry. It's basically if you're just going from a four-way intersection or a roundabout intersection and you're trying to grade separate it and put in ramps and things like that, then it probably is significant, but it also might be something that the ICG says is, if it's not an interstate, maybe it's not as major, but if you're carrying enough traffic to make it kind of seem like an interstate, then it might be something they want to see.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna just kind of make up a quick example here just to show you. And we're just gonna do a mile of road that we're widening from 2-lane to say 4-lane with a center median. So I can put in here segment length in miles. If I put 1, and then once I hit that, then these other cells down here turn blue because they're waiting for entry. And that's what all the red error messages are, because there's nothing been entered in them yet. So one mile of arterial, and then there in this column over here in the left, it's asking for the existing typical section, and this is the proposed typical section. So right now we have 1 lane in each direction. They're 11-foot lanes. There is a shoulder and no median, no bike lanes. And what we want to do is widen that to 2 travel lanes in each direction, 12-foot lanes. It's going to be curb and gutter. It's going to have a raised median, and it's, raised median, and it will have a trail on one side. That is 12 feet wide. And then that cleared all the error messages. This red is saying that my length down below doesn't equal the length I've entered up here, so I put 1 mile up here. Let's just say this is in Hamilton County. Some of this you don't have to put in, but you will have to put in an opening year. We'll put in 2050. And I think it'll make you put in whether it's urban or rural. And then I can go look at so this is the summary sheet. I haven't put in any of this information, so it didn't copy that over. But it's got my widening construction cost, my other items, contingency, an allowance for utility relocation, an allowance for environmental mitigation, and it shows you what these percentages are. And again, those things you can override in the assumptions. So it gives me a 2023 construction cost, because again, these are our 2023 unit costs. And then here's my escalation to 2050 at 4% per year. And then, so it gives me a total 2050 construction cost of 21,740,000. Gives me preliminary engineering, and that was the 15%. I overrode the 10% that was in there. Gives me construction engineering, and I haven't entered a right-of-way cost. So we can go back and enter a right-of-way cost down here. Let's just say it's $200,000. And it's going to assume that that's 2050 because, like I said, it does not escalate this. We used to, early versions of this tool, we used to try to calculate our right-of-way costs, and it didn't jive with actual right-of-way costs. So we quit trying to do that, at least for now. So now that 200,000 is in there. So that's your 2050 total costs. Now, what we haven't done in here, if you've got a project, whoops, I need to go back up. Okay, here's where my project was, but I haven't done anything with intersections. Say there are some intersections that we're going to improve. Those are down below. Say I have 5 intersections where I'm going to add right and left turn lanes on both approaches. So that's 10 approaches and right and left turn lanes in each direction. So that's 20. And it'll add those, assuming that they're 300 feet long. You can put in how many new or modified traffic signals you have. If you're going to add a single lane roundabout or a multi-lane roundabout, say we're going to have 2 multi-lane roundabouts, we can add those. And then that'll add those into the construction cost.
Matt, we had a question from Hitem about what type of documents do we add with right-of-way costs? Is this, Hitem, do you mean if you don't use the spreadsheet or to justify the right-of-way costs?
There was a comment there on the right-of-way
Yes.
section that says supporting documents.
Yeah, and I think we are going to want information on how you derived right-of-way costs. So I don't think it has to be super detailed, but we're asking for right-of-way costs in $20-50. So it could
So
be.
is it safe to say, like, let's say if I go on the website or go onto the Hamilton County website and see a property and see what they cost now and give it an inflation all the way up to 2050, that is the cost that I put in there, and that is the documentation that I put. Is that acceptable? Because we obviously won't be doing appraisals at this point. So
No, we're
Right.
not asking for that much. Yeah, if you look at what your costs are now and just inflate it, let us know that that's what you did, then that's sufficient.
okay, so a simplified spreadsheet of its cost today with an inflation and the cost in 2050. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on this tool or on the cost estimating?
When you say urban or rural, are you what are you thinking? If it's in the urbanized boundary, it's urban. If it's not, it's rural. Is that your thought, or is it just based on what we think the nature of the area is? I mean, or what it might be in 2050, or what's your thoughts on how to make that distinction?
Yeah, I think if it's in the urban boundary, it would be
Is it, Matt, just because I'm curious, is that related to like a certain type of a cross section or?
You know, to tell you the truth, I cannot remember what that is tied to. I'm wondering if it even is going to matter. Yeah, it didn't matter to the cost. So I would say that anything that's in the MPA, we can assume is urban.
Okay.
Are there any other questions about cost estimating or any of the other worksheets that we went over?
For the mapping, you talked about earlier, if it's an existing project, do you already have that information? Or does it
Yeah,
have to
if you're not-
resubmitted?
Yeah, if you're not changing the limits of it, if the shapefile that you've already submitted to us looks the same, you can also, actually, Matt, if I can switch over and share my screen.
Yeah. Yep.
So let's see, which screen is it sharing? On our website, again, if you go to actually the existing MTP, so that's this first link over here under planning. So you go to our website, go to planning, and then go to Metropolitan Transportation Plan / amendments. That's the current plan, and you scroll down. We have a map of all of those projects. So if it's not an uploaded file in MyTip, but you look at this map and you say, yes, that's the same, it's not going to change, then we don't need a new shapefile. But if you look at this map and you know that you either want to segment the project, for example, and break it into a couple of parts, or you want to change the limits because maybe you've already done part of it with local funding and you don't need the whole thing to be in there anymore, then we do need a new shapefile so that we can update this map and actually show where all these projects are located.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey, Jen, I have a quick question. There's two projects in Greenwood, the Worstville Road, the last two segments of Worstville Road. I'm pretty sure the MPO added that internally 2 years ago. I don't see it in my tip as a carryover project anyways. Should I just include it as a new project? I want to keep it in the MTP.
Is it so it's not a funded project, it's on the map. We will take a look at that. Send me an email and we'll figure out why that's maybe not showing up. And if anyone else has similar questions about a project that they're not seeing, because again, we do need you to go in and actually carry over your projects. They won't go into the new plan unless you go in and do that and upload the new worksheets that we need.
Hey, Jen, I have another quick question.
Mhm.
Sri. Hey, I noticed that when we upload the new documents, we can't remove the old documents. Is that right?
I don't think we can delete the old documents. So if you want to like put a date in the name or something like that, that might be helpful. We do have like the documents are, I believe, dated when they get uploaded.
Yeah, it does. But since we are uploading new spreadsheets and almost the same things again, so just put a new name, new date to that in the name file name.
Yeah, that'd be great. Because like I said, you all might want to use those documents just to see what you submitted last time. So those will all be there.
Thank you.
If we don't have any more questions, we can go ahead and wrap up early.
Jen, just one last question. Obviously you had mentioned that the projects would be regional or added capacity around about internally in our city, for example, that wouldn't qualify.
If it's just a roundabout, no, because it's essentially just a different kind of intersection. And even though it may have some advantages for, moving capacity or free flow or whatever, it's not considered in the requirements to be regionally significant enough to include. But
Okay.
if it's a segment of roadway with additional lanes and roundabouts, then yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Hey Jen, this is Brandon. To clarify, for carrying over a regional or a regionally significant project, is there a specific button within that DES that will say, hey, carry over, or is it resubmitting entirely with the documents?
I can show that one more time for anybody who maybe didn't come on at the very, very beginning of the meeting. So if you are, oops, I clicked the wrong thing. Give me 1 second here. If you are in my tip, let me get to it here quickly. Hopefully you can see me clicking things. So there's an MTP adoption button, and then there's a carryover projects link. And then once you go into that screen, you'll be able to see all the projects. You can sort by lead agency if you just want to see your projects, and you'll just need to hit that carryover button. And that will allow you to, I believe, go into the project. Hopefully this isn't immediately carrying something over. I don't think I'm going to hit save, but you'll be able to update project information in here, and upload new documents and whatnot. And then
Okay, excellent.
I'm not
Thank you.
going to save anything, but there's a save and submit button here at the bottom. And then
we want
you can see there's a little
updated-
carryover radial button down here that's checked.
Oh, perfect. Okay, and we want new versions of the documents, even if it's the same answers. We want to make sure we're using the new form. Is that
Yes.
correct?
So, yes. So for anybody, in particular, the LPAs, because those projects are scored against each other so that we can fiscally constrain them, we do need new versions of the documents, because they have been slightly updated from the old ones. All right, not hearing any more questions. Last call. Thank you very much for joining us today. I hope this helped. This presentation is recorded, and so it will be posted online for anybody to refer to in the future. If you have any questions or you want to review Matt's walkthrough of the spreadsheets again, that'll be available. So let me know. You can send me an email. You can call me if you have any further questions, or you want me to give you my thoughts on a particular project and whether or not it needs to be in the MTP or not. I'm happy to do that. So please let me know. And again, that call for projects closes on April 14th. So I will wrap it up there. Thank you again, and everybody have a lovely weekend.
I will add that my contact information is in the first sheet of the cost estimating Excel file. If you got any questions.
Yeah, if you have real nitty-gritty questions about that spreadsheet, ask Matt.
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.